Phone's blowing up. Hola. Woo! You are looking live at the GovCast. South Florida's back in the house. Repping Maryland. Hey, welcome to the fall. Solo today. Everybody bailed. I'm running this show solo today. We'll see how it goes. I don't know if I'm going to get fired today. Maybe it's a new format. I don't know. I don't know if we're bringing back other folks or not. Hey, how's everybody doing? Welcome to the GovCast. Stevie B has ventured out. He is at his new gig. He texted me this morning. That appears to be going great as he starts a new venture out there. And we will have him back on the show to see if all the stuff we talk about in GSU and GovSpen and our government world actually work. That'll be an interesting show. I can't look forward to that. We're going to queue that up for early next year. And Andrea, for those of you who don't know, she's getting married. Today there's some wedding stuff going on, and she chose to do the wedding stuff over come to the show. I don't know why. We'll reprimand her next week. So she's out trying to get married, which would be great. So she'll be back next week. So today, solo. I'll see if I can carry the show today, or if next week you have a whole new set of hosts. So we'll see how that goes. But super, super, super excited. I love this time of year. I love the fall. It's officially holiday season, right? So as you've had all your pumpkin stuff, we're now moving into, I saw a thing on Facebook, we're now moving into peppermint time. So everything goes from pumpkin spice to peppermint time. And the cool weather set in up here in Maryland. Went for a run this morning with 7 layers of clothes. Definitely freezing. I don't know how you people up north stay in shape. It's crazy. And the Braves won the World Series last night. For the 3 people in America that are left as baseball fans, I'm sure they were celebrating last night. And we're obviously in the peak of football season. I saw online again that literally every day from now until Thanksgiving, there's a football game. Yep. Even on Tuesday and Wednesday, the colleges have set in. They're filling those nights with kind of like some of the other leagues. And so all that's going on. Love, love, love this time of year. The fall, football, wrapping up sports, start of the NBA, and the holiday season. Super, super, super great time. And so with all that said, one of the things we're going to do with the show, we're actually going to spend the last part of this year kind of doing a little bit of a different format. And here's the reason why. When we look for stuff for the show, we think about, what would be successful? What are things that are happening? You know, we kind of look at our own team and we look at our staff and, hey, what's really happening? And one of the things you'll definitely see happening is, there's a lot of like fibrillation out there right now. Both because it's the end of the year and folks start thinking about, what am I doing next year? Like, what's next year? Folks just start thinking about, what's next year look like? What goals, what resolutions am I going to do? Right? So that's normal. But there's a couple other traits that are also happening that I think are really important that could be good or could be bad, but they're definitely going to affect next year. And so one of those, in addition, is COVID, right? So COVID's finally winding down a little and seems to be, God willing, a little bit in control. We have some sense on it. Not done yet. So all of you COVID fanatics, I'm not saying it's over yet, but God willing, as we go into Q1, Q2 next year, hopefully COVID will become less of an issue. So that'll be a new thing. And then a new thing for the last 2 years. And then what happens, we all know, right? Hey, from most of the last 18 to 22 months, most folks have been working from home. Right. And so one of the things you see online all the time is, hey, am I staying work from home? And we're going back full time? Are we doing some hybrid models? So companies are all freaked out. They're trying to figure out, hey, what would that look like? What's our new work environment? How would that work? And then, there's some of the federal stuff. Do folks have to get vaccinated before they come back? And how are we going to prove that? And what's the federal mandate? So there's a lot of things will be in play about the new work-life office environment. So that'll be very, very interesting associated with COVID. And then really the other thing that's really a major thing happening out there is that the market, it's definitely, just like it's a seller's market in the real estate world, it's definitely an employees market, right? So the employees, a lot of opportunities out there. A bunch of companies are hiring now, kind of post-COVID or as they ramp up all their operations now. A lot of opportunities. And folks are like, hey, should I go look at a new opportunity? The salary seemed to be higher. I think Biden in one of his interviews was like, well, one of the reasons things are up, the salaries are up. Employees are negotiating higher salaries. So there does seem to be like a higher level of earning out there for folks. And so a lot of folks are analyzing, hey, I know I worked here. There's some opportunities. Someone hit me up on LinkedIn. Should I look at that? What would it be? If it's more money, what does that mean? And so the grass is not always greener, by the way. The money doesn't always mean better. So we're going to talk about some about that and how to analyze that and what's important to you. And then lastly, if you're following both either the politics or the overall economy, there's just some real uncertainty floating through the economy, right? Whether that's some of the things at the federal level and, will this infrastructure bill get passed and some of the other incentive plans and, what's happening with the real estate market. It's been high for a while. And when's the balloon, when's the air going to come out of the balloon? Funny, so quick side story. I live in this condo in Maryland and people here are like some delusional. They're like, oh no, it's never going to go down. And you're like, what? Whatever, it goes up, it always comes down. It always comes down. So for those of you that are planning, it's coming down. Like go look 2008, right? So, when's the real estate market going to give way a little bit? And then just the overall employment and the inflation and the issues with the supply chain. So all those things, right? It's all the kind of COVID, where folks are going to work, the work from home thing changing now going forward. It's an employees market, a lot of opportunities out there for employees right now. And then, some overall uncertainty with the economy. Those four variables, seriously, are going to create such an important part of planning for 2022. Because what happens, literally, your plan and how folks think about 2022 could have an enormous impact on your life over the next 4 or 5 years. There's probably been not another year recently that could have such a big impact how you think about 2022, how you think about your job, your earnings, your overall health. There'll obviously be some impact from the economy. And so that makes planning, thinking about, and goal setting for 2022 so important. So what we did, that was happening in our company. We were talking about it with our staff. And so we said, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to spend the last couple of shows here. We have 7 or 8 shows at the end of the year. And we're going to have a bunch of folks on talking about goal planning, 2022. What should that look like? What's important? We're going to talk about, by the way, company goal planning. What's it look like, maybe for your company? We're going to talk about professionally. What does that look like? Hey, in your professional career. And we want to talk some about personally. Like, what are you trying to get done in your personal life? Because as we all know, or if we didn't know, we certainly know now, especially with work from home, your work life and your personal life are tied together. They're intricate, right? And now they're never more than now is important to, hey, what are you trying to get done personally? Does that match professionally? And again, we'll talk some about, kind of company goal setting. And so over the next 7-8 weeks, we're going to have some of the top folks you see on LinkedIn. We've blessed had some of those on the show. And so we're going to have Kevin Dorsey, KD is going to be on the show. Sherry Leviton's going to be on the show. She'll be here actually next week. We're going to go at a new time next week, 2:00. So Sherry's going to come on. She's busy during the morning. She's, I think, Microsoft at like noon. And then she's going to slip us in at 2:00. So 2:00 next week, Sherry Leviton will be on the show. Scott Leese, Brenda Muller. We're going to have a series of professional and personal and goal-setting coaches on the show. But the whole reason this is coming up, a little different than what we've done, is to say, hey, what are you thinking about for 2022? What goals have you set? We all hear about goal setting and goal planning and write down your goals and put them on your fridge. If they're not written down, it don't mean anything. But again, never more important probably than going into this year with all the variables that I talked about kind of coming to bear. And just important that one last thing, and I'll bring in our guest today, Mike Denker, who's amazing, right? People like you always hear about this midlife crisis, or folks are unfulfilled, or in America, the richest country in the world, folks are just not happy. And one of the reasons for that is, we sometimes don't take control of our life. We kind of blow in the wind. What's happening today? I'll just do this. And folks are not sure. They're like, what should I do? And how should I do it? Well, listen, if you had a plan, right? If you were here, we do it this way. If we're here and you were going to here, and you knew that's exactly where you wanted to go, then you could stay right on track. I'm trying to get to here. Here's what it is. But you know what folks don't do? They don't take good inventory of where they are. And they have no idea where they want to be in 4 or 5 years, right? So when something comes up, they're like, oh, I'll go over here. Oh, I'll go over there. Or maybe I'll go up here. Or should I go down here? Or maybe I just go off the map altogether. Right? And so having a good idea about where you are, doing a self-inventory, and then where do you want to be? Where do you want to be in 4 or 5 years? Truly, your heart and soul, where do you want to be? And the more you're able to lay that out, then some of the other decisions make more sense. You're like, I'm not going to take another job. I'm right in line. Or maybe I do need to take another job because I'm not in line. Or maybe I need to do something totally out of the box and shake it all up. So those are all the things we're going to talk about for the next 7 or 8 weeks. Can't encourage you enough. We'll post the schedule of all the guests that are going to come on. And so we're truly blessed to have some of the best mover and shakers. We have a couple of surprises sprinkled in there as well, some well-known folks. And so look forward to the next 7 or 8 weeks as we talk about goal setting for 2022. So that's the plan. Good. And so this week's going to be our first guest. I want to bring on Mike Denker from 180 Warrior. Mike's life coach, sales coach. And in full disclosure, I've known Mike for a couple decades, consider him a close personal friend. And so blessed today. If we diverge into some niche thing that's an inside joke, sorry about that. But Mike Denker, great to see you. How you doing, boss?
I'm doing great, Jack. Really good to be here.
Great. Thanks for coming on the show. Can you give folks a little bit about your background and kind of the things you've done to let us cross paths?
Well, it's really funny. So I'm here for the folks that don't feel like they fit in when somebody does a goal setting class.
Yeah.
Right? They go, hey,
that's how we're starting. That's how we're going to start.
You want to get there, right? Well, my entire career looks like Jack. Like I accidentally got into selling 6 months out of college. I decided I didn't like it and I wanted to get out of it, but I couldn't get out of it because I really didn't have a plan. So I accidentally got back in it. And then I've been in it for 30 years and I've loved it. I've loved selling. I didn't plan on getting into selling. And I actually, looking back, I think in the time, nothing about selling was appealing to me, but thank goodness I stuck with it. And by
the way, I don't think anyone goes to college when I do interviews. I don't think anyone goes to college and goes, I really want to get into sales. That's such a great career with a lot of, pomp and circumstance. Somehow we fall there, right? It kind of works its way out and you shake it out and all of a sudden you're in the sales world.
Well, the funny thing is that the way I operate, I don't know if I would have functioned in any other role besides selling or sales management or consulting, because I don't fit, like if it was a factory worker, I would have gone postal somewhere in my mid-20s, I think, that based upon my personality. And so I just, I think
the FBI tunes in.
But because selling keeps changing, right? And then if selling gets too normal for me, I just change industries. I've been in medical device, I've been in advertising, I've been in software, I've been in software to the government, software to the public sector. I'm in real estate now, but which is really to the consumer, which is really odd for me. I didn't realize when I said, hey, let's try real estate. Wow, this is really weird because I've never sold directly to consumers before. I've got 30 years of selling experience and it's taking advantage of very little of it. But the consulting piece about setting goals, one of the really interesting things about when you talked about A to B, and you also talked about, the way all those trends in the world, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's the president, whether it's whatever the economy's doing, that when you think about the average and you chart out everybody, like take your organization, you got 200 people, you got 1,000 people, 10 people, you chart them on a graph, and then you can tell Excel to make your average line. Well, the interesting thing is there may be only 2 or 3 people that actually exist on your average line, but then your entire organization operates to that line. Like nobody really lives there. And so I am here to talk to the people that live very far from the line. They're in the mix, but they're not near the line. And so, because I think it's so important that when you talk about goal planning, in my mind, I hear crickets because I can tell you the whole speech. I can tell you how it goes. I mean, I know it. I mean, I know SMART goals. I know how you make the plan. I know how you operate. It just never, ever worked for me. And after, when you're 15 years in your career and you're 0 for 15 on New Year's resolutions, you're kind of like, all right, can we talk about something else? And
that I would say that's the goal of the next 7 or 8 weeks. So if folks see this, you watch the replay or forward it to your friends, we're not going to do any of that. We're going to try not to talk about SMART goals and all the things you'll hear in every vanilla podcast, book. Our goal is that's why I mentioned some of the guests, because we want to bring folks that are just real world, doing things a little out of the box, but have also had a ton of success. And so Mike's being super humble in his background. I know him personally. Mike has impacted literally hundreds, thousands of folks with his coaching and feedback. And he does a ton of additional volunteer work to help folks in his community. It's an amazing, amazing resource as he proactively reaches out. And then I think, we have agreements, so Mike, kick me if I'm wrong, but I think Mike will share, he also, has ADD, right? It's kind of like, hey, like, how do I stay focused? How do I, I've set this year-long goal. How do I stay on point? And so I think that's what you're referencing, right, Mike? It's like none of the traditional stuff, lands well here.
Well, and a lot of it has to do with, ADD my frontal lobe is twice the size of most people that don't have ADD tendencies. And I say tendencies because we're not here for a diagnosis, and I'm not trying to be a therapist, but I know that people have ADD tendencies. It's because there's more thoughts going on than they have hands and feet to give life to. And so how do you filter that? Right? How do you act as your own human control tower when there's 1,000 jets trying to land on one runway? You're the runway, too many jets flying around. How do you filter that out to get to the right jet for you? Yeah. And it's some great, it takes work.
But I think, effort. But I would say for our audience too, I think folks that maybe aren't even ADD, right? Because some people are like, well, don't label me, right?
Yeah.
But I think what's happening, especially, listen, I think for a lot of folks in their 20s and 30s going through kind of their first like major, economic process or, first kind of major job market change, it's like, hey, I have all these opportunities coming at me. Like, do I look at them? Do I ignore them? People are like, I missed Bitcoin. I should have been in Bitcoin. I already missed the .com. You know what I mean? So I think that's why this process we're going to talk about is so important, because again, when you have some guardrails, I've heard you talk about, when you have some guardrails, then you're like, when it falls outside the guardrail, you're like, yeah, I can ignore that. Not in my wheelhouse, right? So important, because even if folks again aren't ADD or feel like they got it, they're sprinkled with a lot of things coming at them, right?
Yeah. So maybe to avoid labels or anything else for a minute, maybe we just say some of us are more easily distracted than other folks. Yeah. And with that, I read a book called Indistractable by Nir Eyal. I apologize, Nir, if I said any part of your name right or wrong, but
we'll post that. For the audience, we'll post it in the comments. Yep.
Wrote a book, Nireyal, wrote a book called Indistractable. One of the interesting things that he first says in the book is a distraction means that you can describe what you're being distracted from. If you can't describe what you're being distracted from, it's not a distraction. You're just living an aimless life. And so I was like, whoa, boing, like right in the head. And so I said, wow, I have to stop saying I'm distracted and start defining what I want to do with my time, so that when I am distracted, I can tell you clearly what I'm being distracted from.
Yeah.
That is a huge life changer. So I just want to say to everyone, think about it for a minute. When you say you're easily distracted, can you describe what you're being distracted from? And if not, that's the first thing to address.
Yeah.
Right? Jack, you walk around with a piece of paper in your pocket every single day. Sometimes it's a napkin, sometimes it's folded up piece of paper, but it doesn't have 80 things on it, right? It's got 3 to 5 things that Jack says, hey, today I've got to get those things done. That's a great habit that he formed a long time ago that says, hey, I can't get it all done in a day, but today I'm going to try to get this done. And so
that is so funny you brought that up. That's so weird. It's such a look for the audience. That literally is my list. I know it's getting a little glare, but I do have my list for today. It literally has, after the show, 7 things on it. Like, that's just how I move. That just works for me. That's my model of like, hey, how do I take chunks? I knew we were going to talk about the elephant. How do I take chunks out of the elephant, right, today to get to my goal?
Yeah. And so I think I just want everybody to know this, Jack, and I'm glad you're taking 8 different flavors, variations of goal setting. And I want everybody to come back because it's important. As soon as one just totally lands on you and you go, wow, that is so me, go to work.
Yeah.
Go to work on it. Don't wait. Don't take the risk of finding another flavor to be distracted.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you go, that sounds like that's me. Jump on it and go to work, because I want you to know that there's a system out there that will work for you. And if the old systems work, listen, keep doing them. You're doing great. Keep on trucking. Goals work. When you write a goal down and you work towards it, it works. It's the problem of how do you stick to it? How do you make a system that keeps you engaged in the march, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what we want to talk about. What's the system that keeps you engaged? And if we get to that system, nail it. If today we don't nail it, come back next week, right? Because there's one for you, and if you haven't found one, that's the job now. Find the system for you, and as soon as you do, the job is work it.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Look, one of the reasons, there's a couple of folks out there online you see all the time, like Garyvee, whether you love him or hate him, one of the things that helped him pop was, he just did things differently, whether you love it or not. He came to the table with a different flavor, because before that it was like, you got to grind 24/7, ... And I think he was very open. One of the things that helped him kind of explode is like, hey, I'm trying to find the real me in here. I need 7-8 hours sleep. I'm dialed in, but then I'm also tuned out sometimes. And I think that sense of authenticity and sharing is great, because you're right. Some people can, I think, some of the presidents are like 4 hours sleep and they go, well, that works. Great. Some other folks though, sleep and find good work-life balance. And it's about, hey, what makes you successful? And so I want to jump into that, but for our audience, I want you to know, again, Mike's super humble about his background at all, but he also has a coaching practice, 180 Warrior. Mike and his family, it just helps so many folks kind of go through their life, coach them through changes, help them both professionally, personally, what are they trying to achieve? And so that's why I wanted to have him on today and kind of start the process a little out of the box about, hey, not traditional SMART goals and blah, blah, blah. You've heard enough of that. Go watch somebody else. So Mike, can you share some of the kind of your framework when you talked about like folks getting maybe easy distracted, or kind of what that looks like in the initial phases when you start with a client or start with somebody who has a lot of potential, a lot of ideas, and kind of how do you start to frame out as folks are thinking about 2022? How do they take 1,000 things and get it down to something more manageable?
So first of all, there's competing voices in my head, right? And there's a voice in my head that tells me how great I am. There's a voice in my head that says I'll never accomplish anything. And there's a lot of other voices competing for airtime. And so the first thing, the voice that says I'll never accomplish anything, it reminds me of all my failures, reminds me of the last time I tried it, didn't work out. Don't try it again. You're no good. That guy's better than you. Whoever, that lady over there, she's got it all going on. You're a miss. You're a mistake. Whatever it is in your head, I have those voices. I don't know as much or more than anybody, but I have them, and it's the enemy. And I call that enemy the jerk, right? So the jerk needs to be quieted. But I'm the 180 Warrior, so we're going to slay the jerk. We don't quiet the jerk. We slay the jerk, because we got to get the jerk out of the way, right? Yeah. So the first thing is recognize the inner voice that is not helping you at all, hurting you so many ways. Kill it. Right. Yeah. Do your best to turn off the volume. I love the mute thing, right? We got these little mutes on all our Zoom calls. Mute the jerk, right? Yeah. But while he's muted, work on slaying him.
Yeah. If I could jump in, I feel like you hear imposter syndrome, right? And for our audience, especially for younger folks, whoever you see, I mentioned Garyvee. I promise you, Garyvee has dark moments. You know what I mean? Like, we're all human, right? You just see on Facebook. We only see on Facebook, social media, the best of people, right? It's my best stuff. Right. But we all have weak moments. We all have second guess ourselves. We all have insecurities, even whoever you think it is, Grant Cardone, whoever you, Bezos, Elon Musk, they all have moments. They go, not sure. Should I go into this rocket? You know what I mean? So it's a thing for everybody, right, Mike? I think it's acknowledging that and being able to get by it, that we're all real people. And it only looks great when you look back. When people have success, then you're like, of course, that's the way it was. But in the moment, everyone has doubts, right?
Well, listen, even Jack, while you're saying nice things about me, and I do appreciate it, and there's a part of me that says, man, that is so right. But then the jerk comes in and goes, Jack is lying. Nothing Jack is saying is really true. He has to say nice things about you. Otherwise, you might leave the show in the middle. And so I think it's so important that we go, that's wrong, right? That is just wrong. And I'm going to accept every good thing Jack or anybody else says about me. And if you struggle with the jerk, listen, get around people that say good things about you. Get around people that see the good in you and hang with them. Like, make them part of your team. Like you need more voices if yours is the jerk too many times, right? So
Amen.
get the good voices around you.
Amen.
And then so the jerk, and then the other thing. So my process in generality is slay the jerk, eat the elephant, and then figure out who your future hero is and be it. And so in that concept, the elephant is, what is that big thing you want to be in 5 to 10 years that you think there's no way it could be you, but choose it, right? What do you want to be? I don't care if this isn't what can you be. What do you want to be?
Yeah.
What do you want to be? And I don't care. I'm not going to say when you grow up because that's a funny thing to say, but from right now, you might live to be 10 years older. And if you do, you've got two options. Do more and accomplish more, or listen to the jerk and stay in bed and quit, right? So somebody said to me, hey, you want to go to grad school? And I said, man, I literally had 2 kids, a pregnant wife, and a full-time job. And he goes, well, listen, 4 years from now, you'll have all of that and a graduate degree, or you'll have all of that and you won't. But right now you decide. And I said, all right, let's figure it out. And lo and behold, I had my 3rd child, and 3 months later, I got my MBA. Like I just said, I've made a decision. And I said, listen, I'm getting older. I can't change that necessarily, but I can change whether I get better. And it's really the decisions we make. And so the elephant is, what's that big, hairy, audacious goal that I'm afraid to mention to other people?
Yep.
Write it down and then mention it to your best friend.
Yeah.
And then now, for me, I realized big, hairy, audacious goals are like 5 years, 10 years. And that's when the little voice inside me starts to turn off. Like, whoa, I can't, I'm struggling with thinking past November. Like, whoa, hold on. So then I go, wait a minute, a decade is only 10 years. Yeah, I've tried the year thing. That doesn't work. All my New Year's resolutions, they're dead by February. All right. Well, okay. Well, then maybe not a year. Well, how about a month? Whew. Sounds like a stretch, but I think I could do it. Well, here's the good news. If you can do a month is a building block to a year, which is a building block to a decade. There's 12 building blocks in a year, and there's 120 building blocks in a decade. Let's work on that building block. Let's change the game. And here's the neat thing. If you're working on 1 month building blocks, you can start now. You don't have to wait till January 1st. Yeah, now is the time. You're always in the middle of a building block that starts less than 30 days from now. So now, and guess what? Here's what's great. If you pick the building block and you start working on it and it's not working out for you, you didn't lose a year, you didn't lose a decade, you lost a month. Put that block away and build on the other blocks you already built on. It's such a great concept for people that can't see too far into the distance. Say, listen, I see where I want to go. I've written it down. I've told a friend. I've broken it down. Now I got to break it down, though. I've got to break it down. So how do you eat an elephant? That's why we use that metaphor. I don't want letters from, pet lover. I own a poodle. I don't know if it's a dog or a poodle, but it's mine and I love it. But you eat the elephant because it's the biggest thing you could think about eating for a meal. And how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? So whether your elephant is a decade or it's a year, or even if it's just a month, you're still going to eat that elephant one bite at a time. So you got to break it down. You got to break it down into parts. And then every day when you make that list, Jack, there's a guy named Brian Tracy. He says that every day when you look at your list, you go, what's the one thing I don't want to do on this list? And he calls that the frog. And he says every day you start your day by eating your frog. Yeah. So analyze your list, figure out which one's the frog, eat the frog first.
We had Ryan Russer. He's on the show, right? He's in the sales world. That's his whole show and his whole firm. They do a lot of outbound calls. Literally talks about that. He's like, eat the frog. That's his show. He literally makes live calls on LinkedIn. Ryan Russert, if you're not familiar with him, great. He's out in California. That's the name of his show. He's like, eat the frog. He makes 20 live phone calls every morning, crack of dawn, like 8 a.m. Crazy.
Well, I'll give you a bonus on that because sometimes when you look at a list, there's 2 frogs, right? So the bonus is eat the bigger frog first. So but listen, get it out of the way because the jerk thrives on the frog. If the jerk can keep you, it seems like the jerk's whole job during the day is to keep you from getting to the frog. So if you eat the frog, you shut up the jerk, right? So listen, even if you don't want to eat the frog, I'm telling you, the most effective thing you can do today is shut up the jerk. And so if I can't shut up the jerk any other way, I'm going to eat the frog just to shut you up. Okay, great. Either way, you win. You got the frog out of the way and the jerk is quiet. Right?
Well,
Which will help you thrive for the rest of the day.
We got jerk. Don't believe the jerk, right? Put away your self-doubt.
Slam.
Set a big elephant goal and be able to break it down and eat the frog first, right? It's kind of step 2. And then step 3, you mentioned superhero or being the hero.
That's the hero of the story is you, your future self. And here's what's really cool. People have a hard time thinking about a better self in the future. But listen, just go back. What's the year? What is it, Jack? 2021? People let me forget sometimes. But so it's 2021. Try to think back to something significant from 2011. First of all, you'll realize how far and long ago that was.
Amen.
Second, 2011, you are different now than you were in 2011. It doesn't matter. Now, listen, you either had a plan and you worked your plan for 10 years or it happened to you accidentally, right? So you can live on purpose or you can live by accident. That's what we're talking about for the next 8 weeks. You can live on purpose or you can live by accident. If you're living on purpose, you'll be able to define your distraction at any time. But if you can just acknowledge, I am different 10 years later, just acknowledge it. If you can acknowledge I'm different 10 years later, now I'm saying you're going to be different 10 years from now. Let's make it a plan and make it the best you can be.
Amen.
Let's make you the hero of this story. And the hero is, who do you want to be? Become that person. You can. I remember one of the funniest things. I left the advertising business to move into the medical device business. I was selling advertising Monday morning. I was at a scientific advisory board in the medical device business on Friday night. It was the craziest thing. Like, you talk about a life change. Woo! And so ADD tendencies make these things possible, right? So I showed up and my boss hands me a notebook and a piece of paper and he goes, Mike, tonight is our very first ever scientific advisory board meeting for our company. And you are the official note taker. What? Now, the jerk in me just went berserk. I mean, just long-winded, blah, 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 you're no good. You can't do this. This is crazy. But I didn't have a choice. My boss told me I was going to be the scientific advisory board note taker. And man, I look back at those notes 2 years later. It was hysterical. There's phonetic spellings. You could tell I had no clue what I was talking about. But here's the cool thing. 2 years later, I knew everything that we were talking about and volumes more. I could have, 2 years later, now I am bragging, I could have run that scientific advisory board meeting and I could have been one of the experts in the room in 2 years. Yeah. And so what's crazy is in that career, when I went and the next day, my boss said something else. I got to shout out to Howard Priceman because he said to me, Mike, you are going to be the world expert in this surgical procedure called vertebroplasty. I was like, Howard, 3 days ago, I had to go on Alta Vista. That's dating myself. I had to go on Alta Vista and search for how to spell vertebroplasty. Now you're telling me I'm going to be the world expert? He says, yes, don't quit. I would argue there's some truth in what he said because, I mean, I joke about saying I was the idiot savant of vertebroplasty because everybody else was focused on a lot of different things and I was focused on one thing, hyper focused. But I taught doctors how to do surgeries. Yeah. And the reason I did has a lot to do with that positive talk. The jerk was going crazy, but my boss, Howard, spoke into me and said, no, Mike, you're going to be the world expert. And man, there is so much truth in that. I could not have written that down, but he spoke it into me. That's why you got to have the good people around you. He spoke it in. You know what my job was? To not argue with it. I just said, all right, let's see what happens. And listen, sometimes you don't have the answer. And it's so important to be okay going, I don't have the answer. Let's just keep moving forward and let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And it reminds me, Jack, of a proverb. There's a proverb that says, man makes plans, God directs his steps.
Yeah.
And the reason that's so cool is that it's steps. It doesn't see, here's where we get wrapped around the axle. It doesn't say man makes plans and God corrects his plans. Man makes plans. If he wants to be corrected, he got to get going.
Yeah.
And in the moving, right? In the moving, you can't steer a parked car, right? You got to be moving to be steered, right?
Yeah.
So there's just so much in that. But if I could get everybody to believe they can be better than they are right now and stop believing I am the best I'm going to be, because that's a lie. That's not true. That's not true for Branson. That's not true for Elon Musk. That's not true for anybody, especially you, whoever you are. It is so not true that you are as good as you're going to get.
Listen, I have
three. Life is improvement.
I have three things you hit on that I want to talk about for our audience. I think super important. One is the people around you, right? I think it's so critical. You mentioned having a mentor, someone that speaks into your life, someone that sees the best in you. I think that is so important, right? Finding a mentor, somebody who's, by the way, who's already where you want to be. Like all billions of people in the world, someone's already where you want to be 99.99% of the time. But there is this thing to be careful of. If you have the same group of people around you, right? Not all those people are trying to lift you up. And sometimes we don't see that, right? Sometimes folks, a lot of people are unhappy, haven't met it. They're trying to like, instead of lift you up, they're trying to like, hey, let's just all stay here. You mentioned the average line. Let's just all stay here at average. You're trying to break out. No, don't do that. Come to happy hour. Come down with us. Let's spend all our money on worthless things. Let's travel around the world for no point. And I just think the people around you is so important, right? Your support network, very, very important.
And listen, if you can't, you don't have to meet Richard Branson. Richard Branson puts on YouTube his greatest thoughts. Like dinner with him might be boring. He might be tired. He might have a cold. You know what I mean? But you can go on YouTube and you can get his best. And here's why I say that. Charlie Tremendous Jones changed my life. And I don't even know who Charlie Tremendous Jones is. I don't know where he lived. I know he's passed away. But he said, you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with and the 5 in the books you read. You become the average of the people you spend the most time with and the books you read. So guess what I did? I started thinking about who I hang out with, and I started reading books. I literally started reading books. I was 23 years old. I could name 2 books that I had ever read, and I was forced to read them. 23. That's a college degree. I had a college degree. I had read 2 books, and the thing that got me to read them, going back to chunking, they were 100 pages. Jonathan Livingston Seagull and Of Mice and Men, check them out, 100 pages. I go, I can do 100 pages. That's it. I never thought I could do more than 100. Charlie Tremendous Jones says, you're not going to make it in life. And another fella, Jim Rohn, says, the most valuable thing in your wallet is your library card. The most valuable thing in your wallet is your library card. Why? Both of them were telling me, Mike, you can be better. You've got to make some investments and you've got to make some changes. You got to change the nouns in your life, the people, places, and things that aren't helping you. They've got to go. And you got to start looking for, and you can't live in a vacuum. You've got to replace them. You got to find better people. You got to go to better places, and you got to start doing different things.
It's even more important now. I sent that exact same thing to our sales team a couple of years ago because we sat in, kind of a cubicle environment where you're right. Whoever's around you is affecting you the most. And you're like, but now think about work from home. One of the variables I mentioned why next year is so important. Most people have been sitting around themselves or maybe their spouse or the roommate, you know what I mean? You're like, oh my goodness. So even more important now, like, hey, who are you around? And if you got, like most of us did, kind of segmented away from people, who are you reintegrating with now? Maybe you got a chance to wipe the slate clean in 2022. Because, when we're in the office, I'm forced to sit next to Susan and Bob. Maybe I don't love them. But now, as we reintegrate or now as you start afresh and now whatever your new work environment is going to be, you can control those 5 people. So that was one. Secondly, in this elephant thing, Les Brown, a great motivational speaker, right? Always said that all the time, right?
That's my Les Brown laugh.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He says, hey, people normally don't fail because they aim too high, or people don't succeed in life because they aim too high and missed, right? They aim too low and it succeeded, right? It's one of his things. And it's like, I love that. When you have a big goal, your second thing of elephant, Like, let's see what you're capable of. When you think about 2022, what are big things when you walk on the beach, when you self-actualize, when you're wherever your peaceful spot is, whatever you're doing as a human being, what are the things that make your heart beat? What are the things you're like, oh, I want to reach people. I want to help the next generation. I love kids. Maybe, you want to have I want all the money in the world. Okay, well, God bless, So what makes your heart skip a beat? Those are when you're talking about big, audacious goals, right? Like, what do you like aim high, man, and let's see what happens, right? Because a lot of people hit a ceiling. They're like, well, I'm done here. And you're like, man, that person capable of so much more.
It's really cool that, what was the term you used about imposter when you were talking about,
imposter syndrome, right? People
imposter syndrome. Well, think about this. A lot of folks are out there hanging around with turkeys because they're better than the turkeys they're hanging around with.
Yeah.
And that's just aiming low. You've got to flock with eagles that stretch you. You've got to find people that are going places you never thought possible. You've got to get around them. You've got to carry their bags. You've got to wash their windows, whatever it is to get around them. I remember one of the coolest things. It was really neat for me. I got to meet Truett Cathy, the guy that founded Chick-fil-A, in his office. And I'm probably one of 10,000 people he ever looked at. And I just happened to lean against the wall while I was there. And he goes, man, you got time to lean. You got time to clean. He was 90 something years old or whatever he was. He was old. And he said, it just in him. He just inspired me for being his presence. And guess how I got there? I told a friend of mine, I said, what are you doing next week? He said, I'm going to Atlanta to be at the blankety blanket, the Chick-fil-A headquarters. I go, can I carry your bags? I literally flew next to him. I literally slept in his hotel room. I mean, I got there and I got there. And so listen, part of it is you just got to say, there's an opportunity right there in front of me. And I am not going to talk myself out of it. I'm going to talk myself into it. And then I'm just going to see what happens.
Amen.
I'm just going to see what happens. So much of my life, and I think all of our lives, I read the books about the people that have made it, and I laugh because they're forcing an outline story into how you do it, into something that so many parts you go, how do you get from here to there? Like, wait a minute, what? It's just pure happenstance, right? He just met the right person on the subway. I mean, some of the coolest things.
But it's about capitalizing on that, right? Like some people see it and they miss it. You know what I mean? And I would just say when folks have their antennas up all the time, because you don't know, I always say, some of the younger people are like, I wasn't doubting. You're like, you don't know when your chance comes. Like most of the time it doesn't come when you think it's coming, right? And you don't know when you're going to meet somebody at a gas station or somebody at an event. You have to be ready. But look, before we go, one other thing that struck me when you were speaking earlier is you mentioned your third part of what's the goal and being the hero. All these guys went into space a couple weeks ago. They put up a big thing. It was they replayed it all the time. So it's Jeff Bezos, the early days of Amazon before he was worth billions, right? And he's, I think, I forget the guy who interviews everybody with the black background. I want to say McNeil Lair. I don't know what his name, but
the Lair Report.
Yeah, Lair Report. So he's interviewing Bezos, young guy. It's very some seen the pictures, but he says he says, hey, to Bezos, what would you love to do if you weren't doing this? You weren't doing the book thing. Out without missing a beat, he goes, I'd love to fly into space and kind of look around for a minute. So if that's on YouTube, you can go look around. 20 years ago, he says it. The audience laughs hysterically. They're like, ha ha, yeah, you're just going to fly into space. Well, damn, almost 20 years ago to the week, it happened, right?
Wow.
And that's staying dialed in. That's a thing that was there. He didn't have to manufacture that. When folks were talking about their big goals, he didn't have to go, do I love space? You know what I mean? It was just in him. And so I just encourage folks when Mike lays out, hey, don't believe the jerk. What are your big elephant goals and taking chunks out of them, be the superhero you want to be. Like that's some soul searching. You don't have to manufacture it. What makes your heart skip a beat? Like what is in you? Because Bezos, his space thing happened because it was just in him. No one had to go, hey bro, you should drop $1 billion into space. He was like, no, I love it. I want to do it. And dang, if he did not take off in a rocket and do that 20 years later. Isn't that crazy? So crazy. So,
Jack, do you have time for me to just rattle off 9 quick questions?
Of course.
I know you're asking the questions.
Yes.
But the future self, right? So first of all, what kind of person will I be in 1 year, 5 years, or 10 years from now? And if you hear negativity, that's the jerk. Silence him. write down crazy things, write down things that maybe your inner voice is such a loud part of your life that just write down new things. What would I do today if I were to act like my future self? Right? What would future me do? Right? Start thinking like a superhero. Like don't think like Clark Kent. It's like future me. Future me wouldn't take this. Future me would say it. Right? Future me wouldn't be afraid to take that opportunity. Future me would do it. Right? It's just be future me. And so how would I behave? How would I feel? What would my confidence level be? Well, future me's a 10 all the time. He loves himself. He's absolutely on point and he loves himself. And you know what's great about super future me? He loves other people more. He's just that kind of guy. What would my future self like me to do, believe, or experience right now? Because think about it. Future you is sitting out there 10 years from now going, hey, listen, you're not going to get to me where you're at. You got to listen. Hey, he's yelling back through the time machine going, listen, this is what you need to do today. And then you pick up Jack's little list and you start doing it, right? And so what could I do today that would make future me proud? All right. And so what would my future self say to me today? How would he encourage me, he or she? What self-limiting beliefs have I been clinging to? I guess if it's future me, it would definitely be he. That's not that I'm just, but you can use these for yourself. How would my life improve if I got rid of this belief? What belief? The self-limiting beliefs that I'm clinging to. Like, listen, the jerk's been busy for your whole life. He knows you, he knows your weaknesses. And guess what? Everything he says, rings of truth. And you got to say, not enough truth to hold me back anymore. Yeah. I'm breaking out. This present me got too much junk. The jerk's dead. I'm going to future me. The jerk is the enemy. I've killed it. It's ready to arc this story and move it on. The big turn. The bad guy's dead. The good guy's ahead. That rhymed. I'm going to write that down when we hang up.
There you go. Amen.
How would my life improve if I got rid of this belief? How did future me overcome this self-limiting belief? How did he do it? Right. You get to write your own story. Future me overcame present me by doing this. And then, you write that down. You go, of course, that's how he did it. It makes sense. And then do it. Like, this is such it sounds easy, but you've got to do the work. The people say, plan your work and work your plan. But here's the problem. People think the hard work is the work. The hard work is the plan. You've got to write the plan. Amen. You've got to go. And then you've got to say, me working this plan, there's going to be some challenges. There's going to be some obstacles. There's going to be some things that pop up.
If it was easy, everybody would do it. If it was easy, everybody would.
But there's a great commercial by Under Armour that says the only way is through.
Amen. Amen. Hey,
and there's a way.
Yes. What we'll do for the audience, we'll get those 9 questions. We'll post them in the comments. So if you could get them, if you could forward it over, our staff will add those 9 questions to the comments. So for folks trying to reach you, Mike, engage, that are trying to get their plan ready for 2022, how do they reach you? What's the best way to connect with Mike?
So 180 Warrior is numbers 180, right? So it's Coach Mike at 180warrior.com. And if you want to call me, call me. My number is 954-673-0039. I want to help you, right? I want to help you get from, if you don't know what point A is, we'll help you figure it out. But we want to make point B bigger than you ever imagined. And then we want to show you how to get there.
Yeah. And in full disclosure, so if you're watching the show, you see same team behind Mike, the stuff behind him. And so Mike also, as an outreach, him and his wife do a lot for kind of helping folks have successful marriages. That's his book. He has him and his wife about Same Team is a marriage, kind of counseling, help folks have healthy marriages. And so we're actually going to have Mike's wife, Angel, on the show in a couple of weeks and kind of talk about maybe some more kind of in the box, formalized goal planning. So Angel Denker, also great life coach, will be with us in a couple of weeks. So I didn't want folks who are like, what's Same Team? What's Same Team? So that's awesome.
Listen, the other half of the team is a real life changer. Don't miss it.
Amen. Any last words?
Be your future self and don't be afraid to make that future self super.
Amen. Thanks for your time, bro. Love you so much. Appreciate all you do.
Love you too.
I wish you
it was a pleasure.
Yes, yes. Thanks so much for your time and energy. Have a great fall. All right, bro. Yeah, I would just say for audience, amazing. What we're gonna. I just want to repeat. We're just gonna try to bring on some folks that have a different perspective on goal planning. Because when we hear goal planning, we're like, no, it's kind of like financial planning or dieting. Like people are like, oh no, right? But this year, just so important. And I love like Mike's model of, hey, don't listen, to the jerk, the self-doubt. Don't do that. What are the goals you really want to do? And being able to make a plan to chunk them up and one bite at a time, and then growing in to be, the person you want to be. Again, it's so important. And especially for folks, that the traditional model hasn't worked. And so love all those things. And so one of the things I love, our marketing folks talked about is kind of, hey, when we wrap, what will we do? And so they wanted to do this segment called, like Signy Says, little alliteration there. And so I just want to go back, the thing that hits me of two things. One, when you think about goals and the thing that makes your heart skip a beat, right? The thing that we know, the things that the people we know, the things that are successful, I just want to share with folks are typically 180 degrees. It's funny that Mike's the 180 warrior, 180 degrees different than what everybody else is doing, right? If everybody else is doing it, there's probably no money in it. It's probably super easy, right? The big things, the tough things are different. They're creative. How do you change the world? How do you fulfill? And don't be afraid of it because it's different, right? It's simply 180 degrees different than how everyone else is doing it. And don't be afraid to stand on that. When you know it in your heart and soul, go chase that, man. So important. And the second thing I mentioned during the show is just be aware, not everyone around you is trying to help you. And sometimes, especially if folks have been the same folks for a lot of years and, seems kind of average, Mike mentioned, look around and be like, hey, what's happening here? Because sometimes we don't see it. Sometimes folks around us are trying to bring us down instead of lift us up. Not on purpose, by the way. I'm not saying these people are ill will. You're not surrounded by ill will people, but they haven't stretched. They haven't set their big goals. And they're like, today we could like go out and get in shape and run, or we could go eat a box of cookies. Today, we could go to happy hour and waste our money on some, $500 pair of jeans, or we could invest it in Bitcoin or something that's going to explode. Today, I can go have lunch with a mentor, somebody who's already where I want to be, and spend my lunch or my dinner with somebody that's going to make me better, or I could go to happy hour. Those are real choices. And I don't say those convicting. I just say those because we want you to be your very best. Amen? And so hopefully you got a lot out today's show. Mike and his team are amazing. If you're looking to do goal planning, you're starting early, I encourage you to reach out to them. All their contact information, the 9 questions will all be in the comments. Appreciate everybody. We'll see you next week, 2:00. Listen, next week it's going to be Sherry Leviton, superstar, social media sales leader. She'll be here next week, 2:00. So we're going to go live at 2:00. She'll be here talking about goal setting, big things for 2022. See you 2:00 next week. God bless. Stay safe. Enjoy the fall. Whoa!